Welcome to another programming video. In this video, I pretty much did more of the same things you've already seen, and I decided instead of narrating it while I recorded, I'd just do a time-lapsey thing, show what I did fast, and narrate over that after the fact. So the first thing I wanted to do is make the map bigger. 640 by 480 felt unsatisfying for the number of platforms I wanted, so I figured let's do 1280 by 720. And as you see, I'm editing the map and reloading over and over to make sure the edits are actually doing what I intend. And then I'm going to be filling in some platforms in different patterns. Now my intention here was to, of course, give the player an interesting journey up from the starting area to the top of the screen, and to give the player enough different routes to take that if the enemies are getting in the way, the player has options. Here we have just a single path without optional routes. I realized a little later on that that wasn't going to be satisfying. So here we have quite a few platforms bouncing around, and I decided to put another one on the top. What I realized was that I wanted the player's destination to be semi-randomized. Alright, what I'm doing here is adding code so the player treats the top wall, the ceiling, the same as they treat the left and right walls, instead of jumping off the top of the screen. And we see I made a little mistake there where I was resetting the player's X position instead of Y position at the ceiling, so it teleported to the left. Alright, and that looks like we can jump around and dodge these things for quite a while. Now, I'm adding some extra symbols to the platform table. Before, I had hard-coded variables for where the enemies were spawning. I decided to change it so I load that data also out of the map with these new enemy spawns, weapon spawns objects. And I believe I also added a player spawn. Maybe I didn't do that right away, though. So yeah, the enemies are now spawning using this dynamic thing instead of a constant. And there we have, I just put my parentheses in the wrong place and it took me a little while to untangle them. Alright. Right, now I am spawning the player also. And then when I load that, the player is going to immediately fall through the floor because I'm spawning the player one tile below the position I should have spawned. Oh, first though, I just forgot to initialize my arrays. Yep, and you could have seen the player there, and there we go. So now the enemies and player are spawning based on the map position, just making it easier to edit the map. And now I'm adding code for the weapon object. There's going to be one weapon object which goes around and you can pick it up, and that randomly spawns. And it's a lot like an enemy in the way that it spawns, which is why I just copy and pasted a lot of code from the enemies. And of course I need to make a placeholder sprite so I can see that and tell it apart from the other sprites. This is me in GIMP, again making a random placeholder blob that's the right shape. Then the weapon didn't show, so I have to actually draw it. And now, there we go. So now there is the thing spawned on the top. It doesn't do anything yet, it's just spawns and draws. But I can try it out, just see if I can get up there, and adjust the enemy stats to make the journey up there more interesting. Or in this case, less interesting, but more fair. The enemies were a little too dangerous. Now I'm adjusting the player to have a score value instead of the enemy's speed to depend on the player's score, so that the game difficulty will increase. And you saw they flew off the screen because their max speed is changing, but not their acceleration. So I go and I change my math a little to make the acceleration and the speed depend on each other, or rather, to make the speed first and then make the acceleration dependent on the speed. So as the enemy gets faster, it also gets better acceleration. And then I just tried manually changing the player's score to get enemies spawning as though I were at different scores, because it's not yet a real way to in-game to actually score points yet. So yeah, I'm experimenting with difficulty curves, changing numbers around, and eventually I decide, okay, that's good enough. Now here I'm factoring out the player's frame into a different function, and the frame for each enemy into a different function. So the main advanced game function is a small thing that calls a bunch of other functions, which just makes it easier to follow the code than having everything in giant monolith. Here I'm adding code that removes enemies from the table if their garbage property is true. And I'm testing that out. So I have the ability to have an enemy end its own existence once it gets successfully attacked, which it will. But to do that first, the player needs to pick up the weapon. So I'm making it so the player has to be on the platform and colliding with the weapon sprite. And the weapon sprite has to exist. That makes the weapon sprite goes away, sets the player to armed. Player.armed equals true. And then I need to be able to tell whether the player is armed while I'm testing this. So I just go ahead and make a new copy of the player sprite. And then, little bug fix, I've got to type player dot. And there we go. Now I can go up there. I take the axe, and now I'm armed. Well, the pink blob, it'll eventually be an axe. And so there's this concept of, did I take the power-up item? Not that it does me any good, I still immediately die. And now I'm adding some code for pausing, because every time I go out to my JavaScript console, the game keeps running and I die while I'm trying to type something, which was annoying. So I'm setting code where on blur we pause, and on the escape key we toggle the pause state. So the game can be paused and unpaused. It's opaque right now, there's no message saying pause, so I just made the background blue for now. There will be messages later as I actually get into what the proper graphics for this are going to look like. And I noticed the weapon was always spawning in the same place because I made a mistake, so I fixed that mistake. I was using a mod sign instead of a times sign on my randomizer call. Now I'm giving the player the ability to actually attack. So I'm figuring if the player is ready to attack and they're armed, and I'm pressing the right key to attack, then I go into an attack state, and while I'm attacking, I can accelerate left and right. And I went back and forth thinking about different variables I could use here. I eventually decided on a single variable called attack frames, which measures both whether I'm attacking at all, based on whether it's 0 or not, and how long I've been attacking for. And also a player.attack facing, because it matters whether I'm attacking left or right. Then I track the player's facing whenever you press A or D, and then the attack facing locks in at the time you attack. And then I'm making an attack sprite, or a couple attack sprites for different directions. And then I am just checking my coordinates and adding code where if I'm in the attack state, then I draw the attack sprite. And the position I draw it at depends on the attack facing. Now I believe that works. We have to get up there and grab the thing. And then I try to attack and nothing happens because I forgot to fill in what key it was. So I type in the word spacebar, which is actually not the name of the key. I should have just typed space. And then I can grab the thing, or fall off platforms trying to grab the thing. And nothing happens still. Or did something happen? I'm actually not sure. This fast-forwarded video isn't always clear on what happened. But anyway, I had a cheat code to make me grab the weapon more easily. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I had to add an extra key that I pressed, just teleport the weapon down so I can get it without having to climb all the way up there. And then I eventually get the attack cycle working. And then I'm adding some more code to give the weapon sprite a state where it can be collectible or not collectible. What I'm going to do with that is have it fall from the bottom of the screen. You can't pick it up until it actually gets to its platform, instead of making it just pop into existence. And I also added some code for the weapon being broken, which is a concept later. After you've finished using the weapon, it's going to fall, and at that point you can't collect it again. And then the weapon needs a frame for its own physics so it's able to drop. So, there we go. The weapon drops down, but it keeps dropping down. There we go. Now the weapon drops down and stops on the platform. Now I'm giving the player weapon charges when you pick up the weapon. You get some random number of attacks. There's a number counting them. Every time you attack, that number goes down. When it runs out, you stop being armed, and the broken weapon drops. And I'm just copying the weapon spawn logic to spawn it in the drop location instead of at the top of the screen. And then I'm setting it so if the weapon reaches the bottom of the screen after you've dropped it, it goes null, so the weapon knows to spawn again. Same way the enemies spawn when there's one missing, the weapon spawns when there's one missing. So you see I'm using up the weapon, and it's falling off the screen, then a new one appears. Bloop, 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 bloop. Yeah, run around, and then I get killed. Because the weapon, as yet, isn't actually doing anything to defend me. Right, I adjusted the timing of the drop, so it drops at the moment you finish your attack. It was just a little mistimed because I was feeling the number the right way. And then I'm just fine-tuning numbers a little more. Yep, the weapon's dropping. I believe what I then do is... Oh, now I'm changing the constants for the attack timing. I had just typed in numbers. I'm changing those to use named constants, so it'll be easier to adjust if I need to adjust it. And so my code's more readable. Anytime you have a number appearing more than a couple times, it's usually a good idea to make a constant out of it if it means the same thing each time. So yeah, I'm grabbing the gun, the axe, the blob. And now I'm changing it so there's a get player hit sprite function, which returns the weapon's attack sprite, and I draw from there. That way I have something to collide against when I'm testing whether an enemy is getting hit or not. So this is preparing to use the weapon sprite as something more than just a graphic effect. So now this sprite object gets made, and it's getting made in the wrong place, so I adjust the position of it. And I try to grab the thingy, and I get killed. And I realized there shouldn't be two enemies at the start of the game. So I'm having the number of enemies that are wanted on the screen to spawn change based on the player score. And now I'm comparing that player hit sprite to the enemy. And if that hits, the enemy gets its damage state set to true. They have to figure out what that means. It means it can't hurt the player. And it means it will accelerate downward and not in other directions. And what am I doing here? Oh, and if it's damaged and it leaves the screen, it turns garbage so a new enemy can spawn, right? Probably there are way too many enemies spawn because the score went up too high. And I took a moment to think about what that was. Meanwhile, I typed it so the damaged enemy falls off the screen in a better pattern. And then I realized eventually, but not yet. Okay, next thing I did was I made a sprite to show the damaged enemy is different from the undamaged enemy, so I could tell which enemy was damaged. Then my score went up way too high, got way too many enemies. And it turned out the reason was the enemy that was already damaged was still awarding points for every frame it was in contact with the weapon. So I fixed that little bug. It only cares about the weapon when it's not already damaged. And now you can see I can go around mashing these enemies, and my weapon runs out, and I have to go grab a new weapon. So this is very, very game-shaped. Obviously, there is the problem whenever I die, I have to reload the page. There's no lives count, no respawning. But that's a thing I can add in next. Now what am I doing here? Oh, I'm just cleaning it up so at the time I get hit, if I'm in mid-attack, the attack concludes properly. Little change. Now I'm just experimenting with mashing the thing. I realized I didn't like the way the attack facing worked, so I changed it so attack facing is now based on which button I press, left arrow or right arrow to attack in a direction, instead of having a facing variable based on the way I was last moving. Then I try that out, and then I get hit in the feet and die. And now I'm just trying out the attacks in different directions. They feel pretty good. And then I pause the thing and quit. Because that was about an hour of programming work, condensed here into 15 minutes. This is looking pretty good. It needs lives. It's going to need some kind of title screen, score display, and actual graphics. And I think I'm also going to probably add some sound effects to it. But this is definitely coming along. And I will talk to you again soon in another video exploring deeper into this program and bring it more towards a playable game state. Goodbye for now.